there are a few that are back with us. I know it's been a couple of weeks with whether it's been crazy weather or maybe you were just out of town or whatever it is. I know there were some that I didn't see last week, and we missed seeing you, but it's great to see you here today. We always are happy to have you with us. This morning, we're continuing the final lesson in our series on Approved. I hope it has been an uplifting lesson series for you. I hope it's been something that has helped you to better understand the way God wants you to live your life. If you have not been able to be here for all of these, they are on the internet, whether it's our Facebook or our YouTube page. You can go back and watch those, see the recordings if you missed out. But I hope these have been helpful for you as much as they have been for me studying and preparing for them. Because the truth is, we all want to be approved. Whether we want to admit it or not at times, there's nobody here in this room that doesn't want to be approved of by God. As I said in my class this morning, otherwise, why would you be here? What would be the point? We all want to be approved of by God. But sometimes we falter in the sense that where we look for our approval might not come from God. Sometimes we fall in different categories, such as maybe we seek more approval from ourselves or from our own train of thought, what we should be doing, what's okay for us to be doing in our own minds. Maybe you fall in the category of someone who is seeking more approval from the world outside, from the people on the planet that maybe are not following God and what they're concerned about or what they think you should be concerned about. Maybe you fall into a category where you're mostly concerned with what your family thinks about or what they would have you do or their desires for you in their life, regardless of if that lines up with God or not. But there are some who concern themselves with what God thinks, what He would want you to do. And that is, I hope, what this lesson series has brought for you, is to figure out which of those categories you fit in. And I hope by the end of these lessons, you are in the category where you're most concerned with God. And you're most concerned with what He thinks and what we should be doing. So as we close this series, we're going to be focusing on the last 4 verses. I know I've been breaking it down 2 at a time. But these last 4 all kind of run together. They have the same idea to them. And so we're going to finish it off by going through all 4. The first of which is Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. It says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." So this word, peacemakers, this is one of the only places I've ever been able to find it used. But this word means gossiper, meddler, etc. Not necessarily what you would think is something that is blessed. We don't usually look at people who are gossipers. In fact, the Bible calls gossip a sin. But the second half here is what you focus on, the change of this word. It's the idea of that you're that kind of person in that you're involved in people's lives. But you're involved in their lives to help them, to create tranquility, to create serenity, to create peace. You're going out of your way to be involved in other people's lives to create that peace, not to create chaos or not just to go and hear what somebody has to say or maybe what some of their struggles are just so you can go tell somebody else. It's not that kind of gossip or that kind of idea. But that's where the core of the word comes from, is that idea of being involved in their lives. And it carries a call to action in that sense. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The Hebrew word for peace, shalom, which most of us have probably heard of or know of, whether you've seen it in movies or read it in books or whatever. But it's not just this idea of conflict. It's not this simple way of looking at things. The idea of peace is it carries this desire to have positive good, to have a positive effect on others. This goes along with the idea that Christ is talking about here when he says, "Blessed are you when you go out and do good." When you try to make peace, help people in their lives, do what you can for them in their lives when they're struggling or whatever might be coming their way. So there's some background to think about as well, and this is something to take in mind when you're thinking about these passages, because we do have to understand that when these were written, they were written at a time where the Romans were in charge, and we have to deal with the people that this was specifically written to. Not that it's not applicable to us, but to better understand it, we need to know what they're dealing with. And so, as I said, this is a time of actual Roman peace to a degree. Roman pax, as it's sometimes referred to. Now, this doesn't mean there was ultimate peace and that there was never any squabbles. There were squabbles on borderlands and things like that. But everything that Rome had control over, the idea is that there was not war going on. It was mostly peaceful, as peaceful as a nation can be in that sense. But the thing is this was not the kind of peace that Hebrew word, shalom, the sense of the word, is talking about. It's not what's being achieved. This is simply peace from war, but it's not peace as in the peacemakers that we are supposed to be. The peacemakers we're supposed to be, based on the words that are used, is a harmonious cooperation aimed at the welfare of all. It's not just keeping from conflict happening or keeping from struggle happening, but it's a type of peace where we're actually working together and always trying to make each other's lives better so that everybody can enjoy the happiness and the blessings that come from God. That's the idea that we're talking about here. Now, a little bit more that we need to talk about, and potentially why this is written the way it was, is the fact that we are dealing with a time where there were Jewish zealots that were out in the world. And this is a very possible thing, or a possible reason. And the reason is because these Jewish revolutionaries, they wanted to reestablish the kingdom of Israel. Even by means of violence, by means of force, whatever they needed to do, they were ready to do to overthrow Rome. They wanted to do that because they thought that is the way that it was supposed to happen. They thought that was the way that it was going to be. And the fact is that is not how the kingdom is taught to be coming. What you actually see when you look through the Bible is that the kingdom of God is going to come from divine initiative. It's not going to come by any one man taking someone and putting them on the throne. But I hope this gives you a little bit of understanding when you read through the Gospels, when you read through the ministry of Christ, how there were times where he had to flee. Because after listening to his words, it says the people wanted to take him by force and put him on the throne. That is not the way it was supposed to happen. That is not the way that it was supposed to be done. And so one of the things that Jesus is teaching here is potentially not only to us, but these Jewish zealots who are ready to by violence create the kingdom of Israel once again. He's teaching them, if you really want to be part of the kingdom of heaven, if you want to be part of the kingdom, it is those who are making peace and promoting peace that are part of the kingdom, not those that are willing to be violent, not those that are causing chaos or trying to do things that God would not have them do. And so there's some background for you to think about that is really important for us when it comes to what Jesus is trying to get across here for us. We also, as I mentioned, this is a call to action. Being a peacemaker, one of the things you're going to see is that Jesus didn't say it this way. He didn't say, blessed are those who love peace. He didn't say, blessed are those who hope for peace. What did he say? He says, blessed are those who are peacemakers. We have to go out and do our part as far as promoting peace, doing the will of God in our lives. And this does not by any means say that we are going out to try to earn our position or earn our place or anything like that. But if you want to be someone who is considered, as it says, a son of God, which we will talk about here shortly, if you want to be someone who God considers family, part of his kingdom, it is those who promote peace. Those who are trying to do what is best for the welfare of all is what he's talking about here. So the approved are those who make peace where there wasn't peace before, or maybe where there is struggle going on, or whatever it might be. They are actively promoting this peace. That is this call to action that we're talking about. But not only that, we see that there's a promise that is not made to those who simply avoid conflict. You know, I am happy to admit that when at all possible, I try to avoid conflict. I don't see the necessity of it. I don't see a reason for me to get in arguments with people for any particular reason. I try to get along with everybody as much as I can. But at the same time, I'm not promised to be called a son of God if I just simply avoid all the conflict. And what I'm talking about is if I avoid the conversation that might be difficult because people don't like what I have to say about God, or the what I'm trying to promote, or the peace that I'm trying to share when it comes to the blessings of God, if I avoid that conflict because I'm afraid of it, that promise is not extended to me. It's not about just simply avoiding the conversation. That's where the call to action is. We have to do our part. We can't just avoid it. William Barclay put it in a really good way. He said, what this beatitude demands is not the passive acceptance of things because we are afraid of the trouble of doing anything about them, but the active facing of things and the making of peace, even when the way to peace is through struggle. We're going to get, in the next couple of verses, we're going to talk about people who made peace through struggle. And it might surprise you who we're going to talk about, it might not. But I'm going to give you examples of exactly what we're talking about here and how important it is. The last part of that verse, as we mentioned, it talks about being called sons of God. This is the blessing or the promise that you're given if you're someone who's willing to promote peace, who's willing to go out of your way to help make other people's lives better. Whatever that might mean, whatever that might be for them. And obviously we're talking about making their lives better in the sense of bringing them to God or helping them in the spiritual needs more so than anything else. But that doesn't mean you have to exclude all the physical things as helping people who are in need of whatever it might be. We try to help people no matter what it is. But those who are called God are those who promote peace, as we mentioned before. But what you see is that God is the supreme peacemaker. And this is what we're going to get at. This is one of the important things we're going to talk about here. The reason is because he is literally called the God of peace. Both in Philippians chapter 4, verse 9, it says, the things you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. But as well as 1 Thessalonians says, now may the God of peace himself sanctify you entirely, and may your spirit and soul and body be preserved, complete, without blame, of the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. But not only is he the God of peace, I want you to look at this next part right here very carefully and take it to heart. God sacrificed. God was willing to make peace through struggle in his own way. He sacrificed his son in order to draw us back into fellowship with him. I'm not going to read all the passages on there. I want to take a small bit of Romans chapter 5, I think verses 8 through 10, and just show you what it says there. It says, but God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Much more than having now been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from the wrath of God through him. For while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his son. Much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. This is an amazing passage here because I want you to understand that we were enemies with God. We did not deserve to be reconciled. We did not deserve to be drawn back to be with him. It is something he willingly gave to us. But he was willing to make that peace with us as his enemies by struggling, by sacrificing himself, by giving his only son, who was a part of him, who was God himself, was willing to come down in the flesh and be that sacrifice that we needed. God was willing to sacrifice. He was willing to make peace through struggle in his own life. And he's ready to call you sons and daughters. He's ready to give you that promise of the inheritance if you're willing to do the same. Now, he's not calling for you to go out and sacrifice your children by any means. That's not the lesson that we're trying to get here. The idea is that he wants you to promote peace. He wants you to help people find a way back to him, just as he helped you. He wants you to look out for the well-being of all mankind, just as he was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice so that all mankind would have a chance of hope. That is what we're talking about. The next verse is Matthew chapter 5, verse 10. It says, "Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." This Greek word persecute, it means the idea of chasing, driving away, even pursuing someone. And the term, it suggests this idea of physical abuse, harassment, other forms of persecution, whatever you might think of it as this type of persecution. But when you think of this physical abuse and you add it to the meaning of the word, they're driving you away, they're chasing you down. This is the sense that they are coming after you for what you believe. They're coming after you for what you have to say. And this is why it ties into the last verse and it ties into the next couple, is all of this has to do with us making peace with those who don't necessarily agree with us, simply because we're trying to promote God in their lives. We're trying to reach out to them. And because of that, we may be persecuted for the sake of righteousness. We may be persecuted for reasons that we don't deserve. But we're trying to be told here and warned that it's going to happen. But it says, blessed are you when that happens. Don't stress over it. So think of the people who are constantly coming after you, even thinking to the point that you're foolish for what you believe because they think you are completely wrong. They will do anything they can, and this might be people in your own family, people you work with, wherever it comes from. But regardless of where it comes from, we're still called to do it. We're still called to make peace. We're still called to promote the gospel of Christ. And then there's also a willingness to endure here. There's this willingness to endure the persecution that we have to have because of our faithfulness. We have to be able to say that no matter what, we're going to go through it and we're going to deal with it. That's what it means when it says for the sake of righteousness. Because you know what is right. And you are willing to do what is right, not what is easy. You are willing to do what you're supposed to do according to what God would have you do, regardless of what might come against you. And so this is going to be those people who submit themselves to that persecution. And that might seem odd to say that they submit themselves to persecution, but it means you're willing to go through it. You're willing to go through the persecution if it comes up against you, because you know that's what the Lord wants you to do. And again, the statement would go that that's how you find favor, or you are God approved, in which case happiness will come your way at the end of all things. Persecution goes along with doing what's right. So we can't really say that it doesn't. I don't think there's any example of anybody in the Bible who went about doing what they were supposed to be doing and were not persecuted in some way or another for it. That somebody didn't rise up against them. It's just a part of who we are. It's what God has told us we are going to have to deal with. And part of that you're going to see when we talk a little bit about the next verse, when Jesus is talking more directly to his disciples rather than in the general terms that he uses in these first 10 verses. But that persecution is going to happen. Peter did a great job of reiterating Jesus' message to us, to all who would follow Christ later in his writings in 1 Peter. He says, "But even if you should suffer for the sake of righteousness, you are blessed. And do not fear their intimidation, and do not be troubled, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence." He says right here, and he ties all these verses together to a degree. He says, don't be afraid of the persecution that comes your way. You will be blessed when you're doing what you need to do for righteousness' sake. But no matter what comes your way, hold your ground. Give a defense of what you believe and why. Teach people the truth. Be a peacemaker. And he says that by saying, do it with gentleness and reverence. We're not supposed to go out and try to attack people. We're not trying to belittle them in any way. We are simply trying to help them and have a heart that we are caring so much about them and so much about their soul that we have a desire to help them find God just as we have. That is why we are giving them an account of the hope that we have. That's what we have to be doing. And you can look at chapter 4, verses 14 through 16 in 1 Peter, and it talks a little bit about that same idea. But it's a wonderful passage that Peter reiterates his Lord's message. In Matthew chapter 5, we have the third of those 4 verses. It says, "Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." Now this is where we switch gears. If you've noticed all throughout the first 10 verses, the way Jesus said it, he said, "Blessed are those, blessed are the." And now he is saying, "Blessed are you." And so we're switching to this idea of talking directly to his disciples, potentially even the 12 apostles specifically. But there is still application here for us and things we need to learn, because this is still going to fall on us if we follow Christ, if we consider ourselves his disciples. So the theme of persecution continues into this verse. We've already talked about the word persecution or persecute that's used, so we won't go back into that. But he adds here the word insult. And this insult, you could say revile would be another translation, maybe one that seems like it comes across a little harder. To think of someone who would revile you for what you believe or what you do. The literal meaning is the idea to hurl insults. The actual literal meaning is to hurl insults from one's teeth or from one's mouth. It's an intense word where people are being as horrible to you as they possibly can to discourage you, to drive you away from doing what you're doing, anything along those lines. This means, so not only will we be persecuted, which if you remember we talked about that idea of physical abuse, now we are also going to have to deal with being potentially reviled and made fun of, however it might come. So we're going to have verbal abuse on our lives as well. And then we won't get too much into it. It's somewhat self-explanatory, but it also says in the verse, those who are making false claims or lying about you, that idea of people who say things about you that aren't true. If you've never had that happen to you, then blessed are you. But if you are someone who has had that happen to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. It's a horrible thing, because sometimes it's hard to come back from that. Because if you can't prove one way or another, only you and God know. And you have to keep doing what you can do, regardless of what the rest of people think about, because someone made a claim against you. But these insults, it says that we're persecuted because of him. The evil that's coming against us is because of him. It's the same thing as saying for the sake of Christ, or even, as we mentioned before, for the sake of righteousness. Apparently it's not working anymore. So for the sake of Christ, or for the sake of righteousness, is what we are talking about here. It also is equivalent to what we talked about in another passage. Oh, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. As I said, to the sake of righteousness, Jesus is trying to help his disciples understand that they're going to be mistreated. They're going to be mistreated just like he was. And he says that in another place down the road in Matthew in chapter 10, verse 24. If you remember, it says, a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a slave above his master. And this statement comes right after verses 16 through 23. If you look at those passages, Jesus is saying that you guys are going to be You're going to be chased. You're going to be mocked. You're going to be potentially beaten. You're going to be all these kind of things, arrested, scourged, anything you want to talk about that happened to the apostles. It all happens because that's what their master had to go through. We aren't above him. We might have to go through the same persecution, the same kind of things that he has to. We might live in a time where, Lord forbid it ever come back and any of us have to be crucified in the way that he was. But that doesn't mean we're not going to undergo a lot of the same persecution and abuse that he had to go through. We have to be willing to go through that for his sake, for the sake of righteousness. Jesus closes this discussion in verse 12 by saying, "Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is in heaven, is great. For in the same way that they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And so he closes it out not with another blessed are you, but he simply continues on with this discussion about what we need to do about this persecution, what we need to do in our lives as far as what is going on and what we're going to have to deal with at this point. The truth is for most of us, or I would say for many of us, we probably find it hard to rejoice in the face of persecution, especially if you've ever been persecuted, verbally insulted, or maybe even lied about to other people. In those instances, I can only imagine what your emotions are probably doing. But your emotions are probably not first instinct going to, I'm going to be happy about this. I'm going to be rejoicing about this. But this is what he asks us to do. And this is what his disciples did, exactly this. In Acts chapter 5, verse 40 through 41, it says, they took his advice, and after calling the apostles in, they flogged them and ordered them not to speak in the name of Jesus and released them. So they went on their way from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they had been considered worthy to suffer shame for his name. You know, there's an old saying out there, and I know some of you probably think you know who it comes from, but from what I understand, it comes from a different place. But there's an old saying out there that if you never stood for anything, or you never made an enemy, you've never stood for anything in your life. If you are going to stand for Christ, I hate to say it, you are going to make enemies. There are going to be people who don't like what you believe. There are going to be people who persecute you for what you believe. But if you hold to it, if you do what is right, you will be blessed. And we need to have the attitude that if people seem to feel the need to come after us, to persecute us, then we must be doing something right. That is what we need to understand. That is something we need to take to heart in our lives. So this joy is to take place because of Jesus' promise. And so not only have we been promised the kingdom of heaven in these verses, but he says your reward in heaven is great. I'm not going to start a conversation or a long discussion on rewards that go beyond just getting into heaven. But there is a statement made here about being more than just getting there. I'll be honest, just getting there seems like enough of a reward. How much more God is willing to bless us now if we're willing to go through this persecution, that we're willing to put ourselves under Christ, submit to him, and suffer for his sake to do what's right. It says your reward in heaven is to be great. The sufferings, whether it's persecution, insults, lies, in the end, they're all going to be light and momentary. Now, we might not think that at the time, especially if you think of the apostles who were scourged, beaten, put in prison. I mean, we don't necessarily think of those being light afflictions. But when you think of the eternity of heaven, when you think of the true blessings that God has awaiting for us, those things are but a short time in our lives, passing by as a vapor, ready for the time to come. Jesus' disciples were those who are going to faithfully endure persecution for righteousness' sake. If you want to be approved of by God, if you want to be considered his disciple, just as the apostles were, just as the early church Christians were, you're going to have to go through persecution. The question is, are you going to be able to faithfully endure it? To continue on, to continue to do what you need to do, even in the midst of that persecution. It's not necessarily something we like to think about, but it is a truth of the matter. And another aspect that it talks about here at the end is not only does Jesus himself say that, the slave isn't above his master nor the student above his teacher, but he says those who are going to be persecuted, they did that to the Old Testament prophets too. You're going to be put right alongside them. None of them went about their business without having their hardships. You can see that all throughout the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. Everybody who was doing work for the sake of Christ had their difficulties, had people that worked against them, had multitudes that worked against them. But he says, if you're willing to do what you need to do, if you're willing to be a disciple, faithfully enduring persecution for my sake, you will take your place right alongside these Old Testament prophets. Because the prophets were the ones who served God and honored him despite being rejected, despite the abuse by those that they were trying to help. I can't think of a better example than maybe someone like Noah, who preached for 100 years in hopes that people would believe so that they could get on that ark and be saved. For 100 years, he tried to help people, to try to convince them that they needed God in their lives. They needed to change their ways. No one ever came to him. In fact, they probably made fun of him every single one of those days for saying something they had never seen before was going to happen. He was willing to go through that to help those that he could, on top of building what he had to build. We need to be like that. No matter how many years God gives us in this life, no matter how much time we have, we need to spend that time serving and honoring him with everything that we are. No matter what comes our way, no matter what might discourage us, no matter what might bring us down. Help each other, lift each other back up. To keep doing the work. Because that's where we want to be. If you want to be in heaven, if you want to have the kingdom of heaven, if you want your reward in heaven to be great, whether we need that or not, this is what we need. This is what we need to do to be approved of by God. In the end, I hope, again, that these lessons have been helpful for you. I hope as we've talked through all of them, you've been able to maybe apply them to your lives to find some way or not. But one last time, I want to try to help us apply all of these beatitudes, not just the ones we talked about this morning, to our lives. But I want to talk about all of them. And the idea for this came from one of our Wednesday night lessons, the discussions we've been having in Romans. We talked about the benefits and things that we get. And I couldn't help but think of all of these promises as the ultimate benefits package. For all those who have already worked or are still working in your life, you probably have an idea of what benefits are. If you have benefits at your job, you can understand how important they are. Well, look at what God's willing to offer to you. He's willing to offer you the kingdom of heaven. He's willing to offer you comfort. He's willing to offer you satisfaction, to be satisfied in your hunger and thirst for righteousness. He's willing to offer you mercy. How much do we need that? He's willing to let you see him. See God with your own eyes. Not just read about him in a book, but to actually see him. To experience spending time with him. He's also willing to call you sons of God. Call you his children. And then there's a few other verses that go along with some of these others that we talk about. The idea in verse 5 that talks about those who will inherit the earth. Well, the idea of being called sons is the idea of getting an inheritance. Usually those who are children get an inheritance. God is offering you all these things. But he's willing to give it to us. He's not asking much. He's not asking much at all in the grand scheme of things for all the wonderful blessings that he is willing to give your way. He's not asking for much in return. But I guess the question for us is, has he offered you enough? Has he offered enough to you to be willing to accept the deal? To move forward in your Christian life? To pursue the approval that he has to give by living as a disciple that you should? If he hasn't, what more do you need? What more can we talk about? The truth is, if you wanted me to, we could sit here and we could work our way all the way through the Bible, and I could list a number of blessings that God is willing to give you that would leave your mind boggled at just how blessed we are. This is 12 verses, or not even 12 verses. It's only about 9 verses that we're talking about in the whole Bible. And in just these 9 verses, how many blessings has he already promised us? Think how many we're going to find if we go through all 66 books. What more do you need? I hope you're willing to apply these things to your life. I hope that you're willing to be merciful so that you can receive mercy. I hope that you have started to hunger and thirst for righteousness in a way that it is the most important thing for you. And trust me, you will be satisfied as that is the case. But I also hope that you know that when we apply these things to our lives and we're ready to walk this road, there might be persecution, or there will be persecution that'll come our way. But we're here to help each other, to lift each other up so that we can continue to be peacemakers, continue to look for the well-being of all mankind in hopes that they can all find Christ, because that is God's desire, that all would be saved. That is our goal. That is what we are trying to do here. I hope this morning that the end of this series has been eye-opening for you, not only to the whole series that we've been talking about, but to everything about what your life is as a Christian and what it needs to be, and what we should be pursuing each and every day. If we really want to be approved of by God, if we want to be the kind of people that God has asked us to be. But I hope in the end that you will apply these blessings to your life, that you will work on becoming this kind of Christian each and every day for your own spiritual well-being. And you will probably be amazed at how you will help others around you the more that you apply these to yourself. The more that you work on yourself, the better you will be able to help those around you. I hope that this is something that has been helpful for you. As I said, it has been a wonderful study for me. But this morning, if God has offered you enough, and you are not a member of the church, if you have not yet become a child of God, don't wait. We only have the time that we've been allotted, and we don't always know how much time that is. If he hasn't offered you enough, come and talk to me. What more do you need? I will help you find it. I will help you find the truth in God's word. Everything that you need to know, he has already said. He's willing to help you find it. And I'm willing to help you look. If you're here this morning and maybe you are a child of God, but maybe you haven't applied these kind of things to your life, maybe you haven't been living your life according to the message that Jesus has taught, I hope that it'll change. I hope this series has helped you become stronger in your own faith, and I hope it'll help you encourage those around you in theirs. If you have any need at all, I hope that this morning you will come as we stand and sing.